Chapter 86. One sword to reach the apex. Chapter 86. One sword to reach the apex. It seems I have really underestimated you. I did not think a domain realm expert would settle down in a small guild. It explains why Su Qianliu dared to openly challenge us, One-Eyed Ghost coldly said as he looked at Shi plus Feng's cloaked figure. However, don't you think you are being overconfident if you think you can provoke our two guilds? After saying so, One-Eyed Ghost suddenly vanished from everyone's vision. However, unlike before, One-Eyed Ghost's disappearance this time also caused the surrounding mana to grow rampant, and even SPACE itself had started trembling. I want to see how many times you can stop my attacks. After learning that Shi plus Feng wasn't an ordinary expert, One-Eyed Ghost stopped holding back, choosing to unleash his mana domain immediately. Then, in conjunction with his bronze footwork, he activated his Tier 3 legacy skill Bloodshadow Thrust. Bloodshadow Thrust was the fastest sword attack One-Eyed Ghost could execute at Tier 3. Upon activating the skill, One-Eyed Ghost would execute 13 consecutive thrusting attacks, each one faster than the one before. When paired with Phantom Ghost, even Stalwart Bear, one of the 5 blades, wouldn't dare to face One-Eyed Ghost directly. This was because the speed of this attack simply wasn't something one could respond to with a Tier 3 physique. Meanwhile, after One-Eyed Ghost vanished from everyone's vision, the only sign indicating that he was still here were the streaks of red light zipping around the battlefield. 1 streak. 3 streaks. 7 streaks. Each streak of red light that appeared moved faster than the other. Even spatial tiers had started appearing around the battlefield by the 9th streak. When Shi plus Feng saw the 13 red light streaks coming for him, he revealed a faint smile. Then, after entering a casual stance, he started brandies. Hi plusing the winter of eternal night. Swords transmigration. Immediately, sword lights also appeared around Shi plus Feng one after another and clashed with the oncoming red light streaks. Boom. 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 Every sword light caused SPACE to shatter and the ground to tremble. The intense shockwaves and explosions gave everyone the illusion that the sky was falling. When all 13 light streaks disappeared, dust enveloped the entire cavern. Then, once the dust settled, everyone could see 2 figures standing on the battlefield. At this time, though, one of them was no longer wielding his sword. Or, more specifically, this person's arm, together with his sword, had fallen to the ground. How is this possible? Everyone was stupefied when the dust thoroughly settled. This was because the person who had lost his arm was none other than One-Eyed Ghost. Moreover, his severed arm wasn't the only injury One-Eyed Ghost suffered. There were also numerous deep cuts covering his body, and his HP had sharply fallen under the 25% threshold, entering a critical level. The vice commander actually lost. Nature Hall's members were in disbelief when they saw that One-Eyed Ghost was heavily injured while Shi plus Feng remained completely unharmed. Although One-Eyed Ghost was no longer as strong as he was on the main continent after entering the miniature ancient world, the techniques and combat standard he cultivated remained. Now that he had also mastered the bronze footwork Phantom Ghost, he could potentially rank among the top 3 of the 8 swordmeisters. Other than God-ranked experts, there was probably no body capable of defeating One-Eyed Ghost without taking any damage. Yet, now, not only did One-Eyed Ghost lose to a no-name swordsman, but he had even suffered a miserable defeat. At this time, One-Eyed Ghost also turned to look at Shi plus Feng, his eyes filled with shock. However, a moment later, he sneered and said, "Your skills truly amaze me. This is the first time I have seen someone capable of such swift attacks at Tier 3. Even the top 3 sword meisters pale in comparison. However, if you think that you can act arrogantly in front of our 2 guilds just because of that, you should think again. If you don't hand over the ancient demon court's key, none of you should think of leaving here today." As soon as One-Eyed Ghost finished speaking, healing spells suddenly started landing on him one after another, instantly regenerating his HP back to full. Even his severed arm had regenerated completely. Immediately afterward, the 100 refinement realm experts on standby surrounded Shi plus Feng. These people are despicable. I can't believe they're resorting to bullying with numbers after losing a one-on-one fight. Happy Snow said angrily when she saw the many refinement realm experts getting ready to fight. Let's join in as well, Big Sis Qianliu. Nodding, Su Qianliu said, Everyone, get ready. We'll try to blast a hole in the barriers afterward. With the guild leader's skills, he should have no problem escaping the two guilds' pursuit. With the help of magic barriers and magic arrays, it wouldn't be a problem for 100 refinement realm experts to whittle down a domain realm expert. It was especially true when both sides were still at Tier 3. After all players had limited mana and concentration. Meanwhile, fighting against refinement realm experts was an entirely different experience than fighting against ordinary experts. One would need to combine powerful combat techniques and skills to kill refinement realm experts. Meanwhile, doing so would put a huge burden on one's stamina and concentration. Hence, in a situation where one didn't have an advantage in tiers, even a domain realm expert wouldn't dare to face 100 well-equipped refinement realm experts. Not to mention, Nature Hall and 100 Flower Palace had 4 apex experts on their side. Just when Su Qianliu and the others were about to reinforce SHI plus Feng glanced at One-Eyed Ghost and indifferently said, Me? Arrogant? No, it is you people who are arrogant. Do you honestly think you can do anything against me with just 100 refinement realm experts? After saying so, SHI plus Feng took a step toward the nearest refinement realm expert. Then, with him at the center, the mana within a 100-yard radius instantly vanished, the sudden change causing the refinement realm experts and One-Eyed Ghost to feel suffocated. Meanwhile, upon sensing the surrounding mana disappearing and his mana domain getting overwhelmed, One-Eyed Ghost couldn't help but be stunned as he exclaimed, "This is a true mana domain?" However, before One-Eyed Ghost could make any further reactions, SHI plus Feng had already raised the Winter of Eternal Night. Then, concentrating all of the mana he gathered from his surroundings into the sword, he transformed the weapon into a mana greatsword that measured 100 yards in length and swung it. First sword, Light Shadow. Boom. This was the first time SHI plus Feng had executed Light Shadow after his strength attribute had reached the Tier 4 threshold, and everywhere the Sword of Light Pares, said through transformed into a pitch-black void. Even a Tier 4 mythic monster would suffer serious injuries if struck by this attack. A Tier 3 player would be utterly helpless against this attack. The instant the Sword of Light made contact with One-Eyed Ghost's body, his HP fell to 0 instantly, and even his body had disintegrated into nothingness. Meanwhile, after SHI plus Feng completed his attack, an unprecedented silence enveloped the cavern as everyone dazedly stared at the broken SPACE around SHI plus Feng. Chapter 87, True Monster. Chapter 87, True Monster. He died. I must be dreaming. How can he kill 100 refinement realm experts in one move? This must be a dream. 100 Flower Palaces and Nature Hall's members couldn't help but doubt their eyes when they saw One-Eyed Ghost and the 100 refinement realm experts evaporating from the battlefield. They were aware that Civ gaps could exist even between Tier 3 experts. Take One-Eyed Ghost, for example. They were unlikely to beat him even if they ganged up on him. However, even though they couldn't beat him, they could see and understand why they were inferior to him. The current situation, though, was something they couldn't even understand. At this time, let alone the two guilds' experts, even Su Qianliu and the others were flabbergasted by this situation. The attack SHI plus Feng just executed had already exceeded their common sense of what a Tier 3 player was capable of, and it was something none of them had seen before. What just happened, Big Sis Ru? Why couldn't I sense even a bit of mana fluctuation coming from him just now? Rain Song asked as she turned to cleansed Ru, her eyes filled with shock and confusion. That attack's power was close to reaching the Tier 4 peak standard. How can a Tier 3 player like him unleash such power without using any Tier 3 super skills? SPACE in GODS domain was incredibly stable, and attacks would typically have to reach the Tier 4 peak standard to shatter SPACE into oblivion. Unless a Tier 3 player used a Tier 3 ancient super skill or spell, it should be impossible for them to achieve such power. However, Rain Song had failed to sense any mana fluctuations coming from SHI plus Feng just now. In other words, SHI plus Feng had unleashed that extraordinary attack just now without employing the use of any skills or spells. Instead, he had relied entirely on his techniques to execute that attack. Even as someone who used to be at the peak of Tier 4, Rain Song had never heard of a Tier 3 player being able to execute an attack at the Tier 4 peak standard. He should have used some kind of mana technique just now, Cleansed Rue said, a grim expression on her face as she looked at SHI plus Feng. However, out of all the mana techniques I know, none of them are capable of unleash HI plusing such destructive power. You too can stop guessing. That was indeed a mana technique, Crimson Heart suddenly said as she watched the SPACE around SHI plus Feng slowly mending itself. But this mana technique should be AGODS Legacy. AGODS Legacy? Upon hearing Crimson Heart's words, Rain Song immediately turned to look at SHI plus Feng, her voice trembling as she muttered, "Doesn't that mean, he is, it is just as you guessed." Look at SHI plus Feng. Crimson Heart's complexion sank slightly as she said, "He should be a Tier 6 sword god. Crazy. This is crazy. Why would someone like him come to this place?" Rain Song ranted almost frantically as she looked at SHI plus Feng. Tier 6 God ranked experts stood at the pinnacle of GODS domain. Unless Tier 6 GODS appeared, they would be near-invincible existences. Currently, the reason why so many experts had chosen to abandon their achievements on the main continent and enter the miniature ancient world was so that they could hopefully ascend to greater heights. Even Tier 5 experts were no exception. However, it was a different story for Tier 6 God ranked experts. As individuals who had already reached the theoretical finish line of GODS domain, Tier 6 God ranked experts did not need to enter the miniature ancient world. After all, no matter how great of a fortuitous encounter they came across in the miniature ancient world, the best they could achieve was to climb back to Tier 6. Rather than waste their time doing such a futile action, they'd be better off doing other, more productive things. At this moment, Rain Song wasn't the only one confused by this situation. Even Cleansed Rue, a Tier 5 expert, was similarly confused. For what reason did a Tier 6 God ranked expert like SHI plus Feng come to the miniature ancient world? Did he come here to bully noobs because he had nothing better to do? While Cleansed Rue and the others were feeling shocked and confused, SHI plus Feng, who stood in mid-air, turned to Crimson Heart and Stalwart Bear. Then, like a God looking down at a bunch of ants, he asked, "Do you still want to continue?" Even before obtaining the Tier 3 Ancient Mana equipment set, SHI plus Feng had never cared about any first-rate guild. Now that he had the Mana equipment set, the only guilds that could enter his eyes were super guilds. Otherwise, he wouldn't have left the Ancient Demon Court with his team. Meanwhile, upon hearing SHI plus Feng's question, the two first-rate guild's members couldn't help but turn to look at Crimson Heart and Stalwart Bear, anxiety coloring their faces. Previously, they had looked at SHI plus Feng and his team as if they were ants. Now, though, the situation had made a complete reversal, and SHI plus Feng could decide their life and death with just a thought. It should be known that a guild war order was sealing the map they were currently in, so they couldn't log out even if they wanted to. Moreover, SHI plus Feng's team could even freely resurrect them after killing them. If Crimson Heart and Stalwart Bear answered poorly, everyone here would have a bleak future ahead of them. "You jest, sir." After a moment of silence, Crimson Heart frankly said, "If you wish to leave now, I doubt we'll be able to stop you even if we wanted to. SHI plus Feng's attack just now had already destroyed the magic barrier enveloping his team. At this time, even Su Qianliu and the others could freely leave the cavern, let alone SHI plus Feng." Hearing Crimson Heart's words, Stalwart Bear helplessly gestured for Nature Hall's members to step aside and open a path for Zero Wing's team. Meanwhile, neither Crimson Heart nor Cleansed Rue was surprised by how decisively Stalwart Bear responded. With Stalwart Bear's personality, he would have fought to the very end if SHI plus Feng wasn't a Tier 6 God ranked expert. It wouldn't matter even if Nature Hall's team ran the risk of annihilation. He would take his chances so long as he had the slightest possibility of victory. However, the only solution to a Tier 6 God ranked expert was another Tier 6 God ranked expert. Without a Tier 6 God ranked expert on his side, The only thing Stalwart Bear could do in this situation was to take the loss. This was because it was incredibly difficult to topple a God-ranked expert using numbers. If he did that, he would only be worsening his losses. Not to mention, they were currently in the miniature ancient world. Making an enemy out of a Tier 6 God-ranked expert here was no different than courting death. After seeing the two first-rate guild's members opening a path, SHI plus Feng locked the ancient demon court's entrance and said through the team chat, "Let's go." Meanwhile, whether it was Su Qianliu or Blackie, both of them couldn't help but stare at SHI plus Feng in a daze. Being able to win against one of the 8 sword meisters was already an astonishing HI+ing feat now. SHI plus Feng had even wiped out 100 refinement realm experts in a single move. Even the legendary experts of God's domain were probably incapable of such a feat when they were at Tier 3. Chapter 88, Famous. Chapter 88, Famous. After SHI plus Feng and his team left the cavern, Stalwart Bear couldn't help but turn to Crimson Heart and asked, "What do you think of that God-ranked expert? If even you don't know him, do you think I would?" Crimson Heart said, rolling her eyes. Out of the God-ranked experts and Tier 5 experts capable of reaching Tier 6, none of them resemble him, Stalwart Bear said with a pondering look. "I suspect that he doesn't belong to our God's domain." "Indeed, the possibility is high," Crimson Heart said, agreeing with Stalwart Bear's opinion. There were only so many Tier 6 God-ranked experts and Tier 5 experts with the potential to reach Tier 6 in the game, and everyone belonging to the upper echelons of God's domain more or less knew of these people. So, it didn't make sense that an unknown Tier 6 God-ranked expert had suddenly appeared out of thin air. If that's the case, it might be worth befriending this person. A Tier 6 God-ranked expert not belonging to any local power could become a weapon of Ma's destruction in the miniature ancient world. If they could befriend SHI plus Feng, once it came time for the various powers to compete with each other, their two guilds could hold a Ma's civ advantage in the competition. After all, there was no way any Tier 6 God-ranked expert from the main continent would enter the miniature ancient world. They had much more important things to do than retrain their accounts from Tier 3. "I'm afraid it won't be convenient for Nature Hall to approach that guy," Stalwart Bear said. Then, he turned toward Cleansed Rue and smiled, saying, "I heard that you have tried to invite Su Qianliu to 100 Flower Palace several times before, Miss Rue. In that case, you should have a good relations. HI plus P with Su Qianliu, right? That Su Qianliu looks like she shares a close relations. HI plus P with that person, so we will have to rely on you for this matter." "Me?" Cleansed Rue was a little stunned when she heard Stalwart Bear's words. "We can only rely on you now, Rue," Crimson Heart said, seconding Stalwart Bear's words. "Not only did we lose the ancient demon court, but we have also suffered heavy casualties today. If we want to compete with the other first-rate powers, our only hope is to rely on that God-ranked expert. Don't you know Su Qianliu in the real world? Try to learn more about that person through her. If we can tie him to our boat, you'll be making a big contribution to the guild." "All right, then. I'll try my best," Su Qianliu said, sighing. Meanwhile, shortly after Nature Hall and 100 Flower Palace removed their guild war order, the various powers investigating the two guilds came to learn of an astonishing HI+ing piece of news. It turned out that the reason the two top-tier first-rate guilds had locked down a map was because of a newly established guild called Zero Wing. However, after the two sides finished Class HI+ing, the two first-rate guilds had kept their mouths shut about Zero Wing and even behaved fearfully when talking about the new guild. Investigate. Find out Zero Wing's origins no matter the cost. It seems Zero Wing isn't some ordinary guild. Notify everyone in the guild to be careful around Zero Wing's members. The various powers based in Rock Devil City had varying reactions toward Zero Wing. Some grew curious, some grew fearful, and some thought of befriending Zero Wing. For a time, Zero Wing's name gradually spread throughout Rock Devil City. While Zero Wing's name was spreading, SHI plus Feng had already returned to 100 Flow City with Su Qianliu and the others. Guild leader, There are currently 3 first-rate guilds, 8 second-rate guilds, and many third-rate guilds and adventurer teams operating in 100 Flow City. These powers are all fervently recruiting members, and the benefits they offer are very high. With our current lack of funds, I'm afraid it'll be tough for us to attract any new members in 100 Flow City, Su Qianliu explained, growing a little worried after learning about 100 Flow City's situation. My suggestion is that we lower our entry requirement and gradually train the newcomers from the ground up. We can even fill our guild warehouse while doing so. What do you think? The guild benefits SHI plus Feng had set for Zero Wing were indeed astonishing. HI plus Ing, and true experts of GODS domain would find it hard to refuse these benefits. Normally, if a guild were to offer such benefits, experts would flood to join the guild. However, the problem now was that SHI plus Feng had set too high an entry requirement for Zero Wing. Most experts with the strength necessary to meet Zero Wing's entry requirement would either be an expert belonging to the various large guilds or an expert used to the lax management of adventurer teams. Most importantly, the price to exchange the Holy Annihilation mana technique was astronomically high. While it was indeed generous of SHI plus Feng to offer such a powerful mana technique up for exchange, the exchange price simply wasn't something the average player could afford. Hence, the mana technique's existence was akin to a display item to most players rather than something they could strive for. In comparison, credits, weapons, and equipment, things that players could use to improve their strength, were much more practical. Unfortunately, Zero Wing just so happened to lack all 3 of these things. What you say does make sense, SHI plus Feng nodded. However, I don't plan to develop Zero Wing into a bloated guild with no substance. It is especially so during the guild's initial development phase. We simply do not have the resources to train a large number of people. But we won't be able to recruit anyone if we don't do that, Su Qianliu said in exasperation. While Zero Wing's recruitment standards could be considered on par with the various superpowers, Zero Wing wasn't a superpower. It was merely a small guild established recently, and it didn't even possess an ounce of fame in 100 Flow City. Meanwhile, the development of a guild required a large number of players. After all, one of a guild's main sources of income was the completion of guild quests. The more players a guild possessed, the greater the income the guild could generate from guild quests. Then, with the money earned from guild quests, the guild could better itself and attract more players, thereby forming a positive development cycle. After pondering for a moment, SHI plus Feng suddenly asked, "How many gold coins can you SS right now?" "Around 150,000 gold, Su Qianliu answered after giving the matter some thought. "You're a really rich woman." SHI plus Feng was a little surprised when he heard Su Qianliu's answer. He didn't think Su Qianliu's adventurer team would be so wealthy. "That's the money my adventurer team saved up over the years. If not for the land we rented in the Thousand Stars Tower, we could have had 300,000 gold right now," Su Qianliu said, sighing ruefully. A wealth of 150,000 gold coins might seem like a lot, but in a large NPC city like 100 Flow City, that money was chump change. This was because even the smallest guild residence here would cost 100,000 gold to purchase. In the case of medium and large guild residences, their prices started from 500,000 and 1 million gold respectively. This was also why she had sought the capital investment of those several corporations. 150,000 gold is already enough, SHI plus Feng said, chuckling. "What I need you to do now is to convert all these coins into magic crystals. Try to convert as many as you can." "Magic crystals? Didn't we get over 10,000 magic crystals in the ancient demon court just now?" Su Qianliu asked in confusion. For a small guild, a sum of 10,000 magic crystals was already a significant amount. It was absolutely more than enough to sustain a small guild of several thousand members for some time. "That amount is far from enough," SHI plus Feng said, shaking his head. However, he didn't bother explaining his goals. Instead, he said, "Anyway, just try to exchange as many magic crystals as you can. I'll pay you back twofold afterward." If it was before clearing the ancient demon court, SHI plus Feng might have followed Su Qianliu's suggestion for the sake of keeping Zero Wing operating normally. However, the situation was different now. The most profitable way of earning money in God's domain would definitely have to be operating a settlement. It was also why the various guilds sought to operate their own towns and cities, with some even going as far as to attack and take over NPC cities. Now that he had obtained a town rune crystal from the ancient demon court, he naturally didn't have to follow the standard development path for guilds anymore. While a town might not be as profitable as a guild city, the amount of money a town could generate still far surpassed that of an ordinary large guild. Chapter 89, Small Guild. Chapter 89, Small Guild. 100 Flow City, Teleportation Hall. At this time, 3 players geared in level 100 dark gold equipment sets walked out of the teleportation hall and entered the restaurant opposite the Candlelight Hotel. Then, while having a light meal, they scrutinized the Candlelight Hotel across the street. If someone were to carefully observe these 3 players, they would find that despite looking only around 20 years old, these 3 players radiated an aura of sharpness and confidence that one would rarely find on ordinary experts. In addition, all 3 of them were half-step refinement realm experts. Is that where Zero Wings members are resting? A male berserker carrying a spear on his back asked while scrutinizing the dilapidated hotel across the street. Then, a look of surprise flashed across his eyes as he muttered, "What a strange hotel." Although the Candlelight Hotel looked dilapidated and inferior to the other brand-new hotels in the city, the number of players entering the establishment was astonishingly high. He had already spotted several players entering the Candlelight Hotel in just 1 minute. Even more surprising was that these people had entered the hotel sneakily and hurriedly. These people would look around their surroundings, making sure that nobody was paying attention to them before swiftly entering the hotel. It's normal for it to be strange. Otherwise, there'd be no reason why the higher-ups of our 2 guilds would ask us to infiltrate the place, right? A female elementalist with a HI+ing appearance said, a look of interest appearing on her face as she looked at the Candlelight Hotel. That's right. The last of the trio, a robust male SHI+ELD warrior, nodded. Then, in an excited tone, he said, "So long as we can join Zero Wing and become Zero Wing's core members, we'll be able to join the ranks of executives and receive priority training from our guilds." I really don't know what the higher-ups are thinking. Why would they have us of all people infiltrate a guild? Shouldn't this job be left to those outer elite members? The berserker youth said, a pondering look on his face. It's excessive to do this even for another first-rate guild, let alone a newly established guild. The 3 of them ranked among the top 5 of their respective guilds' new recruits this year. They were also graduates of top-tier God's domain academies. Yet, instead of providing them with proper training, their guilds had tasked them with infiltrating a newly established guild. Even the various superpowers wouldn't dare to take such an extravagant action. "Why are you thinking so much about it?" the female elementalist asked as she glanced at the berserker youth. Then, she happily said, "Judging by how suddenly the higher-ups gathered us this time, they probably didn't have a lot of time to prepare and decided to have us fresh graduates take on this job instead. Not only do we have a clean resume, but we'll also have an easier time getting accepted as core members in a small guild like Zero Wing. This is a transaction that's beneficial to our guilds and ourselves. Rather than complain, we'd be better off trying to finish our task as quickly as possible." The robust SHI+ELD warrior nodded, expressing his agreement with the elementalist. "I guess you're right." After thinking it over, the berserker felt he might have been overcomplicating things. "In that case, let's finish our meals and hurry inside. The sooner we join Zero Wing, the sooner we'll be able to finish the higher-ups' task." Afterward, the trio quickly finished their meals, HI+ing their stamina and concentration back to full. Then, they crossed the street and entered the Candlelight Hotel. However, the moment the trio entered the Candlelight Hotel, they couldn't help but be startled. What dense mana! Although the mana outside was already plenty dense, the density of the mana inside the Candlelight Hotel was even more terrifying. Standing inside the hotel made them feel like they were standing inside a cloud of mist made up of mana. Their thoughts became much clearer and calmer as soon as they entered the building. "How may I help the 3 of you?" Blakeanna the NPC asked with a smile when she saw the trio entering the hotel. We are here to join Zero Wing, the Berserker said, getting straight to the point. Very well. Zero Wing's registration booth is over there, Blakeanna said as she pointed at a corner of the lobby. At this moment, there was not a soul standing in front of Zero Wing's registration booth. The only person at the booth was a bored-looking man dressed in a dark grey robe. Judging by the booth's state, it didn't seem like Zero Wing was a guild worthy of two top-tier first-rate guilds' attention. However, the trio didn't put too much thought into the matter. After all, this was their guild's instructions. No matter how terrible Zero Wing was, they still needed to join it. Immediately, the trio approached the registration booth. Are you three here to join Zero Wing? When Blackie saw the three youths approaching the booth, his eyes promptly glowed in excitement. Hours. It had already been hours since he had set up this booth. Yet, not even one person had come forth to ask about joining Zero Wing throughout this time. Now that three people had come forth simultaneously, Blackie was so moved that he was about to break into tears. MHM. The three of us just graduated from our respective academies. We plan to develop in 100 Flow City, so we are looking to join a guild, the Berserker youth said, nodding. But the three of us do not wish to become cannon fodder. We want to become core members directly. May I know what the requirement is to become a core member? The female elementalist and robust SHI plus ELD warrior also nodded to express their agreement with the Berserker youth's words. In the current state of GODS domain, it'd be incredibly difficult for small guilds to recruit new members. It was especially true for graduates of GODS domain academies. Even if a fresh graduate chose to join a small guild, they would typically ask to become core members directly. Otherwise, they could simply join a large guild and become an internal member there instead. You want to become core members directly? Blackie grew a little embarrassed. Said when he heard the Berserker youth's words. I'm afraid it'll be difficult to fulfill your demand. Difficult? Smiling nonchalantly, the Berserker youth said, you can rest assured of our strength. Our equipment might not look like much, but we are confident in our combat standards. May I know what's the combat standard requirement to become a core member in your guild? Is it the 7th floor's early stage? Or the 7th floor's middle stage? For the typical small guild, players would only need to reach the Trial Tower's 6th floor late stage to become a core member. Even if Zero Wing was a unique case, there was no way its requirement would exceed the 7th floor early stage. Meanwhile, as half-step refinement realm experts, the three of them could clear even the 7th floor late stage. With their current combat standards, they could even become core members in second-rate guilds, let alone a small guild like Zero Wing. In response, Blackie looked at the three youths for some time before awkwardly saying, Refinement Realm. Chapter 90, Hidden Foundation. Chapter 90, Hidden Foundation. The spy trio fell into a daze as they looked at Blackie's slightly chubby body. What about elite members? The Berserker youth asked. Refinement Realm, Blackie repeated, scratching his head awkwardly. The trio was rendered speechless by Blackie's words. Didn't this basically mean that only Refinement Realm experts were allowed to join Zero Wing? Cliff, do you think this person saw through our intentions? The female elementalist secretly asked through the team chat. It should be known that if a Refinement Realm expert chose to join a first-rate guild, they would immediately be accepted into the guild's main force and given the position of core members. Yet, now, newly recruited Refinement Realm experts could only become elite members in Zero Wing. No matter how she looked at this situation, it was simply absurd. I don't think so. We were only asking about Zero Wing's recruitment standards. We have never specifically expressed our intention to join Zero Wing, the Berserker youth named Duskcliff replied. What should we do, then? The female elementalist asked in exasperation. This guild is simply insane. The robust Guardian Knight nodded in agreement. If he wasn't here on a mission signed by his guild's higher-ups, he would have cursed at Blackie already. Refinement Realm? Aren't your standards a little too high? After giving the matter some thought, Duskcliff looked back at Blackie and asked, the three of us are at the 7th floor's middle stage standard. What position will we be given if we join your guild? You can become internal members so long as you account you emulate enough guild contributions, Blackie said in embarrassment. If it weren't for SHI plus Feng's maddening requirements, Zero Wing could have more or less recruited some expert players by now. Internal members. The spy trio breathed out a sigh of relief when they heard Blackie's words. At the very least, they could still join Zero Wing with their strength. Had Blackie said that the minimum requirement to join was also the refinement realm standard, they would have probably exploded in anger on the spot. Seeing the hesitant expressions on the three youths' faces, Blackie hurriedly said, "Our guild offers excellent benefits to internal members. So long as you become an internal member, you'll get the opportunity to exchange a mana technique legacy that will help you significantly in reconstructing your mana body and reaching Tier 4. Upon hearing Blackie's words, the trio looked at each other briefly before turning back to Blackie, a hint of disdain flashing past their eyes. If it weren't for their guild's request, they would have probably turned around and left already. After all, no matter how they looked at it, the person before them was undoubtedly a scammer. First, it was the absurd entry requirement into Zero Wing. Now, Blackie was saying that internal members could exchange for an incredibly precious resource in God's domain. If they didn't know any better, they'd think that Blackie was recruiting players for a super guild rather than a newly established guild. No, even the various super guilds wouldn't give their recruits the chance to exchange for a precious mana technique. However, despite the disdain they held in their hearts, they still kept up their act on the surface. Mana technique. Okay. The three of us will join, Duskcliff said, pretending to be excited. Meanwhile, when Dawn Moon, the female elementalist, saw Duskcliff's performance, she couldn't help but marvel at the man's acting skills and lament over their fate. All three of them were geniuses who graduated from top-tier God's domain academies. Duskcliff, in particular, was even the third-ranking genius among Nature Hall's new recruits this year. Yet, here he was, forced to react excitedly over joining a small guild that was recently established. Afterward, the trio signed a standard contract for Zero Wing's internal members with Blackie, inwardly sighing in relief when they placed their signatures on the paper. They had finally completed the first step of infiltrating Zero Wing with this. Afterward, all they needed to do was think of ways to improve themselves, accumulate guild contribution points, and become core members as soon as possible. Meanwhile, as soon as the three youths signed their contracts, Blackie saw SHI plus Feng walking down from the second floor. Hurriedly, he walked over and proudly said, "Guild leader, look how amazing I am. I just secured us 3 internal members. This person is Zero Wing's guild leader." When Duskcliff and the others heard Blackie's words, they promptly scrutinized SHI plus Feng's cloaked figure. At this time, SHI plus Feng gave off the feeling of an ordinary civilian. If not for Blackie taking the initiative to greet him, they would have thought that SHI plus Feng was merely an ordinary player staying in the Candlelight Hotel. He didn't look like a guild's guild leader whatsoever. 3 half-step refinement realm players? After scanning the 3 youths, SHI plus Feng nodded and said, "That's quite a good achievement for people your age." When Duskcliff and the others heard SHI plus Feng's words, they couldn't help but sneer inwardly. They didn't think that Zero Wing's guild leader would spot similar nonsense to the vice guild leader. While they couldn't be considered the best for reaching the half-step refinement realm standard at 20 years old, they were still top-tier among their peers. Not to mention, they could potentially reach the refinement realm at any time, becoming a true expert in God's domain. "Do you have any more questions about our guild?" SHI plus Feng asked as he looked at the trio. "No," Duskcliff said. "In that case, I have a task to give you," SHI plus Feng said. "I have a group of new recruits who have just finished the first phase of their training and require testing. Can the 3 of you spar with them?" "Testing?" Duskcliff inwardly sneered. Rather than testing the training results of Zero Wing's new recruits, he felt that SHI plus Feng was trying to test the 3 of them instead. Even so, he still pretended to be happy as he said, "If it is a command from you, we are more than happy to oblige, guild leader." "Okay, come with me, then," SHI plus Feng said, nodding. Then, he started making his way to the hotel's EMENT. A magic barrier sealed the Candlelight Hotel's EMENT, and non-Zero Wing members were prohibited from entering it. As soon as Dusk Cliff and the others entered the bustling, they promptly noticed that the density of the mana here was much higher than even the mana found on the first floor, and they couldn't help but be shocked by this discovery. They didn't think that a small guild like Zero Wing would actually have the means to create such a mana-rich environment. Even the combat rooms found in advanced hotels didn't have such dense mana. No wonder the higher-ups are having us investigate Zero Wing. If we can acquire the method to create such an environment, the development speed of everyone in our guilds will increase by a large margin, Dawn Moon said in realization. TL notes, the 9th of February, 2022, changed SHI plus ELD Warrior to Guardian Knight in Chapter 89. Chapter 91, Gathering of Monsters. Chapter 91, Gathering of Monsters. A moment later, SHI plus Fong led the three youths to the largest combat room in the Candlelight Hotel's bustling. At this time, 6 people had already gathered inside the combat room with a radius of 100 yards. Of them, 5 were young men and women around 17. All 5 of these youths were only at level 102, which was the current average for mainstream players, and they were also geared in nothing more than fine gold equipment. Meanwhile, these youths behaved like frightened rabbits as they stood before a masked female Sin. When Hidden Soul saw SHI plus Fong entering the room with 3 unfamiliar faces, she asked in surprise, "Are these 3 the test opponents?" At a glance, Hidden Soul could tell that Dusk Cliff and the others were already close to reaching the refinement realm standard. So long as they could make it a habit to remove all of their unnecessary movements, they would reach the refinement realm. For these 3 youths to reach such a standard at such a young age was quite an amazing feat, and they could already barely be considered geniuses if put in the various superpowers. Normally, the various superpowers would have long since SNATC head up such youths, so it'd be incredibly difficult to find even one of them unaffiliated to any guilds. Yet, SHI plus Fong had found 3 of such talents. Will they do? SHI plus Fong asked. They'll do. Hidden Soul nodded. Let's begin right away, then. Meanwhile, when the trio in question overheard SHI plus Fong and Hidden Soul talking about them in such a casual manner, they felt their blood pressure rising. All right. Turning toward the trio, SHI plus Fong pointed at Wu Lingling's group of 5 and said, "You will fight the 5 of them together. There won't be any restrictions imposed." The 5 of them? Dusk Cliff and the others couldn't help but be a little confused when they turned to look at Wu Lingling's group. Not only was there a significant gap in equipment standards between their 2 groups, but there was also a huge gap in combat standards. Based on their observation, they could say with certainty that NO body in Wu Lingling's group had reached the refinement realm standard. With such a huge disparity, even one of them could take on Wu Lingling's group of 5, let alone all 3 of them. It should be known that they were graduates of advanced GODS domain academies. Taking on a bunch of freshmen was a piece of cake for them. Rather than a test, it'd be more appropriate to call this a bullying session. However, Dusk Cliff and the others didn't put too much thought into the matter as they quickly got into battle positions. Don't blame us for this. This is the guild leader's instructions, Dusk Cliff said, expressing his helplessness as he looked at Wu Lingling's group of 5. The requirement of their respective guilds' higher-ups was for them to become core members in Zero Wing. Now that they were only internal members, they'd have to perform well and prove their worth if they wished to become core members quickly. Meanwhile, Wu Lingling and the others didn't say anything in response to Dusk Cliff's words. Instead, all 5 of them quickly got into position, none of them daring to make even the slightest mistake. After experiencing how scary Hidden Soul could be, none of them wanted to experience it for a second time. Begin. After seeing that everyone was in position, Hidden Soul started the combat room's battle mode. Immediately, Dusk Cliff and the others drew their weapons and got ready to take action against Wu Lingling and the others. Meanwhile, as if Hidden Soul's words had triggered something in them, a crazed look suddenly appeared in the eyes of Wu Lingling and the others. Then, before Dusk Cliff's group could react, Wu Lingling the swordsman activated her berserk skill that doubled her basic attributes and sent out over a dozen sword lights that locked onto her opponent's vitals. At the same time, Xiao Yuheng the ranger and Liu Yucheng the cleric also activated their berserk skills. Then, Xiao Yuheng started raining arrows down on Dusk Cliff's group while Liu Yucheng summoned light barriers to surround the trio. As for Lu Wuxuan the Guardian Knight and Qin Wuchen the As Sa S Sin, they had also activated their respective berserk skills and appeared in front of Dusk Cliff's group. Damn it! Dusk Cliff's group was startled by this situation. They didn't think Wu Lingling's group would be so crazy and scary. Hurriedly, they activated their berserk skills and tried their best to block the five's coordinated attacks. However, the moment they clashed with Wu Lingling's group, Dusk Cliff and the others realized a scary matter. Rather than academy freshmen, it'd be more appropriate to describe the 5 juniors in front of them as reckless little monsters. The coordination between the 5 was excellent, and the way they chained their attacks was seamless. It was as if the 5 of them were of one body, and they didn't even need to look to know what each other was doing. They had also flawlessly used each other's skills and spells to their own advantage. However, this still wasn't the most frightening matter. What was even more astonishing was their combat standards. Even though Wu Lingling and the others looked like they were only 17-year-olds, all 5 of them were already close to reaching the half-step refinement realm. Or, more specifically, they could already exert fine control over their 4 limbs. Wu Lingling, in particular, was at the half-step refinement realm already. Subsequently, in less than 30 seconds, all 3 members of Dusk Cliff's group collapsed to the ground, while everyone in Wu Lingling's group remained alive. What kind of place is Zero Wing? How can a new guild produce such a group of little monsters? Even after Dusk Cliff and the others got resurrected, none of them could believe the outcome of the battle. These were 17-year-olds they were talking about. When the 3 of them were at this age, even the Trial Tower's 6th floor early stage was far out of their reach, let alone the half-step refinement realm. Yet, now, out of the group of 5 juniors before them, 4 already possessed combat standards nearing the 7th floor's early stage. One of them even reached the half-step refinement realm standard already. After factoring in their perfect coordination, they could probably hold their ground against even a refinement realm expert. Meanwhile, after experiencing this fight, Dusk Cliff and the others gradually understood why their 2 guilds had tasked them with infiltrating Zero Wing. The guild known as Zero Wing definitely wasn't as simple as they thought. In reality, let alone Dusk Cliff's group, even SHI plus Foam couldn't help but be astonished when he saw how the fight turned out. He didn't expect Hidden Soul to be such a capable trainer. It had only been a few days since Wu Lingling and the others started training under Hidden Soul. Yet, now, the combat experience they showed already said what Blackie and the others possessed. Moreover, they had already practiced the exercise he taught them to a very high level of proficiency, and the way they utilized their skills and spells even made use of some of the Flowing Water Realm's principles. At this rate, it probably wouldn't take more than half a month before all 5 of them reached the refinement realm. Meanwhile, Hidden Soul nodded her head and said, "Not bad. Since all of you said the test, we can end your training for today. From tomorrow onwards, we'll be conducting your training outdoors." Upon hearing Hidden Soul's words, Wu Lingling and the others loosened their breaths simultaneously. Their tense expressions also relaxed significantly. "We finally said," Wu Lingling said as she patted her chest. Then, she smiled at Qin Wuchen and the others, saying, "Thank goodness our opponents this time weren't strong. I don't ever want to experience getting killed thousands of times again." Dusk Cliff and the others couldn't help but feel offended as they looked at Wu Lingling. Yet, they had no words to say back to her. SHI plus Foam also couldn't help but take a look at the resurrected trio before him. Chapter 92, That's right, she is only an outer member. Chapter 92, That's right, she is only an outer member. After the test was over, Wu Lingling and the others logged out of the game to rest. They had been training continuously for a long time before the test, so all of them were incredibly exhausted now. Not to mention, they also had many things they needed to do tomorrow. Meanwhile, after Wu Lingling's group left, SHI plus Foam turned toward Dusk Cliff's group and said, "I heard from Blackie that you 3 wanted to become Zero Wing's core members?" "Yes." Dusk Cliff and the others turned to look at SHI plus Foam, their eyes full of wariness. Even so, their voices did not contain any hesitation when they spoke. After their fight with Wu Lingling's group, they came to understand that the seemingly ordinary man before them definitely wasn't an ordinary person. This was because the moment they stepped inside this combat room, they immediately noticed how powerful and extraordinary of an existence she was. Even though Hidden Soul was clearly standing there, none of them could perceive her presence. Although they had never come across such a situation before, they knew that anyone capable of accomplishing such a feat absolutely possessed incredibly high combat standards. This was because even the Tier 5 assassins they had come across in their respective guilds were incapable of erasing their presence to such an extent. In other words, Hidden Soul should be top tier even among Tier 5 experts. Yet, despite being such a powerful expert, Hidden Soul was not Zero Wing's guild leader. Moreover, based on the conversation they overheard, it would seem that this female assassin was answering to SHI plus Feng's instructions. God's domain was a world where the strong were respected. No matter how respected a guild's guild leader was, so long as this guild leader lacked strength, experts stronger than the guild leader would, at most, treat the guild leader as an equal. There was no way these experts would behave like obedient underlings. The fact that Hidden Soul was following SHI plus Feng's orders without question meant that Zero Wing's guild leader was stronger than this female assassin, and under no circumstances should they underestimate him. Meanwhile, few players in God's domain would join a guild without desiring to climb to a high position in the guild. In the rare case that such players appeared, there was a high chance that they were spies. Hence, rather than deny SHI plus Feng's question, it'd be best if they openly acknowledged it instead. Not bad. It's good to have ambition, SHI plus Feng nodded. Dusk Cliff and the others were momentarily stunned by SHI plus Feng's response. What did he mean? Also, why did it feel like SHI plus Feng had touched a nerve in them? Do you see her? SHI plus Feng suddenly asked as he turned toward Hidden Soul. Huh? Dusk Cliff and the others also turned toward Hidden Soul, feeling a little confused by SHI plus Feng's question. Nodding, SHI plus Feng said, she is currently an outer member of Zero Wing. Outer member? Huh? Dusk Cliff and the others couldn't help but widen their eyes in shock, feeling as if SHI plus Feng was playing a joke on them. After all, how could an expert, who they suspected to be at the peak of Tier 5, be only an outer member of Zero Wing? Hidden Soul, that's right. Looking at the trio, SHI plus Feng said, but you don't need to be surprised. The only reason she is an outer member is because she wants Zero Wing's mana technique legacy but doesn't want to get tied down by restrictions. Their Dawn Cliff and the others were shocked. They originally thought Blackie was joking with them when he told them that the guild offered a mana technique for exchange. After all, mana techniques were incredibly precious resources, and even the various superpowers top-tier geniuses wouldn't necessarily be able to get their hands on one. Yet, now that a suspected Tier 5 expert had joined Zero Wing for the specific purpose of exchanging Zero Wing's mana technique, it proved that the matter of Zero Wing offering a mana technique legacy for exchange was true. Moreover, the mana technique in question should be beyond the standard fare. Otherwise, there was no way someone of Hidden Soul's caliber would want it so much that she'd willingly join a small guild like Zero Wing. After all, the various superpowers would be more than willing to offer her a mana technique should she choose to join them. Of course, SHI plus Feng calmly said. If you can get your hands on that mana technique legacy, not only can you reach Tier 4 in a short time, but you can also establish a STURDY foundation for Tier 5. However, you'll need a significant amount of GCPs to exchange it. Even if you three are internal members now, the technique will still cost you 8 million GCPs, so you'll have to work hard if you want it. Establish a foundation for Tier 5. When Dusk Cliff and the others heard SHI plus Feng's words, a Par-S cyanate flame ignited in their eyes. With their talent, the three of them were confident in reaching Tier 4. Reaching Tier 5 was too difficult of a feat, and the chances of them succeeding were incredibly slim. Meanwhile, every Tier 5 expert was in existence standing at the apex of God's domain, and even the various superpowers would treat Tier 5 experts as VIPs. If they could get promoted to Tier 5 in the future, they would instantly ascend to the peak of life. Meanwhile, after SHI plus Feng offered some words of encouragement to Dusk Cliff's group, the trio also went about doing their own things, leaving only SHI plus Feng and Hidden Soul inside the combat room. "You treat your subordinates very well," Hidden Soul said, feeling a little surprised. "They're not my subordinates," SHI plus Feng said, shaking his head. "Or, more precisely, they're not true members of Zero Wing, but rather spies from other guilds." Hidden Soul was stunned. "You know that Zero Wing is very poor. The guild has hardly any money and resources right now," SHI plus Feng calmly said. "If I don't give them some encouragement and tell them that the guild offers mana techniques for exchange, would the guilds behind them willingly send money and resources our way?" It should be known that 20-year-old half-step refinement realm experts were considered geniuses even by the various superpower standards. Yet, 3 such geniuses had chosen to join Zero Wing instead of a superpower. No matter how one looked at it, there was no way this situation was normal. Otherwise, he wouldn't have bothered wasting so much effort into nurturing Wu Lingling and the others. Hidden Soul had nothing to say. She felt that SHI plus Feng's words made a lot of sense. At this time, SHI plus Feng suddenly received a message. Then, after reading the message, he looked at Hidden Soul and asked, "Do you have time to go out on a trip with me right now?" "Go out? Now?" Puzzled, Hidden Soul said, "It's going to be nighttime soon. The nights here are very dangerous outside." "MHM." Nodding, SHI plus Feng said sincerely, "That's why I am inviting you." "Hidden Soul?" After opening the system map, SHI plus Feng pointed at a place several maps away from 100 Flow City and said, "Don't worry. It isn't a dangerous place. We'll only be making a trip to the Misty Canyon." When Hidden Soul took a look at where SHI plus Feng pointed, she couldn't help but ask, "You want to visit a level 120 map?" The miniature Ancient World's level suppression was much stronger than the level suppression on the main continent. Just a difference of 5 levels would increase a monster's challenge difficulty by 1 rank. In other words, if players tried to challenge a Great Lord that was 5 levels higher, they would essentially be going up against a Grand Lord that was 5 levels higher. If the monster in question was a Grand Lord, its challenge difficulty would increase to that of a Grand Lord ranked archaic species. If players fought against monsters 15 levels higher, an ordinary Great Lord's challenge difficulty would directly increase to that of a mythic monster. In response to Hidden Soul's question, SHI plus Feng cancelled the concealment effects of his black cloak. When Hidden Soul saw SHI plus Feng's level of 105, she realized that he actually possessed the ability to visit the Misty Canyon. Then, after pondering for a moment, she said, 500,000 points. As a Tier 5 expert rivaling Tier 6 GOD-ranked experts, her services did not come cheap. It was especially true when she needed 40 million points to exchange for the Holy Annihilation mana technique. "Deal. Let's go," SHI plus Feng said without bothering to negotiate prices. Then, he made his way out of the combat room. "Did I ask for too little?" Hidden Soul was a little stunned when she saw SHI plus Feng's decisiveness. However, she still quickly sorted out her equipment and followed SHI plus Feng. Chapter 93, Ancient Dark Gold Mount. Chapter 93, Ancient Dark Gold Mount. Outside the Candlelight Hotel, Su Qianliu and the others had long since been waiting here. Meanwhile, when Su Qianliu saw SHI plus Feng coming out of the hotel, her first thought was to walk up and greet him. However, before she could do so, she suddenly entered an alert stance when she saw Hidden Soul walking behind SHI plus Feng. This was because the moment she saw Hidden Soul, her instincts told her that the other party was a monster-level player that could give even the various superpowers a huge headache. There was no doubt that Hidden Soul was much stronger than the likes of One-Eyed Ghost. Meanwhile, when SHI plus Feng saw Su Qianliu's wary expression, he calmly said, "No need to worry. She is with us. She's one of us." Su Qianliu was shocked when she heard SHI plus Feng's words, and she couldn't help but scrutinize Hidden Soul's cloaked figure. The strength of a guild depended greatly on the number of strong experts it possessed. If one Tier 6 GOD-ranked expert was enough to elevate a guild to the status of a top-tier first-rate guild, then 2 Tier 6 GOD ranked experts could get a guild recognized as a superpower in GOD's domain. If Hidden Soul truly was Zero Wings member, Zero Wings' future wouldn't stop at just the first-rate standard. It was entirely possible for the guild to become a superpower in the future. Did you bring the things? SHI plus Feng asked, not bothering to elaborate on Hidden Soul's situation. Yes. After snapping out of her daze, Su Qianliu handed a spatial bag to SHI plus Feng and said, "There are 320,000 magic crystals here. This is everything I managed to exchange." This much should be enough, SHI plus Feng said. After storing the spatial bag away, SHI plus Feng took out a black flute from his bag SPACE. A dark gold mount. Hidden Soul couldn't help but be surprised when she saw the flute in SHI plus Feng's hand. Dark gold mounts were by no means on the main continent. At this stage of the game, most guild leaders would have a dark gold mount already. However, it was a different story inside the miniature ancient world. Since players weren't allowed to bring mounts with them when transferring here, players would have no choice but to hunt for their own mounts in the miniature ancient world. However, even until now, no information regarding mounts had spread in the miniature ancient world. Even the various superpowers guild leaders had to use their own 2 feet to travel here. Meanwhile, when SHI plus Feng blew on the flute, a black hole immediately appeared on the street outside the Candlelight Hotel. Then, a giant white wolf that measured 7 meters tall and had a purple lightning mark on its head walked out of the black hole, its 3 snowy white tails swaying slowly from side to side as it moved. Is it a monster invasion? No, it's a mount. DAMN. Someone already got a mount. What rank is this mount? Why does it have such a powerful aura? The players walking on the street grew restless and confused when they saw the Thunder Wolf appearing. Then, they turned toward SHI plus Feng's group, their eyes filled with curiosity and envy. In the current era where players could only travel using their feet, obtaining even a basic mount would elevate their leveling efficiency by a significant margin, let alone a mount that was as big as the Thunder Wolf. It was common knowledge that a mount's size reflected their strength to a certain extent. Meanwhile, a 7-meter-tall mount was at least equal to a great lord of the same level in strength. In the current miniature ancient world, it would be immensely useful to have a great lord on one side. This mount looks so cool. I'd buy it in a heartbeat even if I have to pay 1,000,000 credits for it. Just 1,000,000? Are you dreaming? Dark gold mounts go for at least 3,000,000 even on the main continent, let alone the miniature ancient world. Not to mention, with how strong this wolf looks, it might even be an epic mount. If that's the case, the various guilds would probably fight for it even if they have to pay 20,000,000. A great lord ranked mount isn't just a means of transportation. It can also be incredibly useful in battle. Just this point alone is more than enough for the various guilds' executives to fight to obtain it. That's right. I'd be willing to become the girlfriend of whoever owns such a mount. When the surrounding crowd saw the Thunder Wolf sitting down before SHI plus Feng and sticking its tongue out cutely, they nearly drooled out of envy. The biggest trouble players currently faced in the miniature ancient world was transportation. Even with the speed of a Tier 3 player, it'd take over half an hour just to run from the city to some of the closer leveling spots, while some of the farther ones required 1 to 2 hours of continuous running. As for farther maps, few players would be willing to travel there. This was because of the mysterious energy that filled the miniature ancient world. So long as players stepped out of the protection of NPC cities, this mysterious energy would continuously corrode their bodies, reducing their stamina and concentration. This meant that players only had limited time to grind out in the fields. If players spent too much time on traveling, it would impact their leveling efficiency significantly. Meanwhile, the assistance a Great Lord ranked mount could provide would absolutely increase the owner's leveling speed by 2 times or more. A Great Lord ranked archaic species? SHI plus Feng was similarly astonished when he saw the Thunder Wolf's attribute panel. On the main continent, the average level 100 dark gold mount would only start out at the Lord rank. Moreover, even if players nurtured their dark gold mounts properly, their mounts could, at most, reach the Great Lord rank. Yet, now, the dark gold mount, or, more specifically, The ancient dark gold mount before him had actually started out at the Great Lord rank. Moreover, it was even an archaic species. In front of it, ordinary Great Lords of the same level were nothing but pushovers. If he nurtured the Thunder Wolf well, it might even ascend to the Tier 4 mythic rank in the future. At that time, it'd be a nigh unstoppable force on land. However, compared to the Thunder Wolf's combat power, what surprised SHI plus Fong even more was its movement speed. The Thunder Wolf's movement speed was close to rivaling that of Tier 3 common flying mounts. In other words, its movement speed was on par with that of Tier 4 players. Blackie, how about selling me that Shadow Panther of yours? If a fragmented legendary item drops in the future, I'll be sure to let you have it first, Firecloud said to Blackie after seeing the Thunder Wolf. Scram. I'm a magical claw. SS while you're a melee claw. SS. We don't even use the same items, Blackie said contemptuously. Meanwhile, after SHI plus Fong was done inspecting the Thunder Wolf stats, he hopped onto its back and looked at Hidden Soul, saying, "Hop on." In response, Hidden Soul snapped out of her daze and jumped onto the Thunder Wolf's back as well. "Let's go," SHI plus Fong said to Su Qianliu and the others as he pulled on the Thunder Wolf's reins. Immediately, the Thunder Wolf retracted its tongue and stood up. Then, putting force into its legs, it propelled itself forward, transforming into a gale as it sped through the street and Vonnie's. HI plusing from everyone's vision in the blink of an eye. What speed! Hidden Soul, who was riding atop the Thunder Wolf, couldn't help but be surprised once more when she experienced the mount's speed. She also had to change her evaluation of the Thunder Wolf's usefulness. Now, she felt that the Thunder Wolf could easily increase SHI plus Fong's leveling speed by 3 or 4 times rather than just 2 times. Currently, the biggest problem players faced when leveling up wasn't their lacking strength. Instead, it was their limited range of activity. However, with the Thunder Wolf speed, SHI plus Fong could increase their range of activity by 10 times or more. He could explore places where other players couldn't reach, and all the resources and monsters in these places would belong to him and nobody else. Naturally, his leveling efficiency would increase even further. After SHI plus Fong rode the Thunder Wolf out of 100 Flow City, the many players and powers operating in 100 Flow City promptly started looking into the ident. I of the Thunder Wolf's owner. Meanwhile, with the Thunder Wolf's speed, it only needed to run for 20 minutes before crossing even the farthest maps that current 100 Flow City players grinded in. Subsequently, it took another 2 hours to cross the mountains and forests infested with level 110 plus monsters. Finally, after running ceaselessly for 4 hours, SHI plus Fong and Hidden Soul arrived at the Misty Canyon, a map infested with level 115 to level 120 monsters. It was also the closest large map to the Boundary River. Chapter 94, Town Rune Crystal. Chapter 94, Town Rune Crystal Miniature Ancient World, Misty Canyon. SHI plus Fong pulled the reins of the Thunder Wolf and stopped in front of the Misty Canyon. Then, he looked back to Hidden Soul and said, "We're here. It's your turn next." As a level 120 map, the Misty Canyon was filled with level 115 monsters or above. Even if he had reached level 105 already, he would still be under a lot of pressure if he had to fight against monsters 10 levels higher. After all, the challenge difficulty of ordinary Great Lords would increase to that of Grand Lord ranked archaic species with such a level difference. Even if his strength attribute had reached the Tier 4 threshold already, he wouldn't dare to go up against several hundred Grand Lord ranked archaic species simultaneously. While these monsters couldn't outright kill him, they were more than capable of exhausting him to death. Not to mention, the Misty Canyon was considered a neutral zone in the miniature ancient world. It was also the map that linked 2 GODS domains together. The monsters inside weren't just limited to Great Lords and Grand Lords. Mythic field bosses probably littered the place as well. If he came across one of these field bosses, he would have difficulty even escaping. Meanwhile, the AS Sinclair. SS was the most suitable class. SS for exploring maps. This was because the effects of level suppression did not apply to the perception of monsters. With the stealth skill and her combat standard, Hidden Soul could remain undetected even if she moved within 100 yards of a level 120 mythic boss. The terrain here is incredibly complex. Are you sure you want to go inside? Hidden Soul asked after glancing at the canyon ahead. Rather than a canyon, the Misty Canyon looked more like a giant meteor crater. Moreover, in addition to the complex terrain, mist also enveloped the entire crater, which reduced visibility to less than 300 yards. Even if she scouted the area beforehand, it'd be very easy for them to encounter a group of monsters if they weren't careful. The chances of such encounters would also increase the deeper they traveled into the Misty Canyon. Of course. Why would I bring you here otherwise? SHI plus Feng replied in an affirmative tone. Now that the various powers had increased their efforts in recruiting manpower in the miniature ancient world, he needed to do something to make sure Zero Wing didn't fall behind. Meanwhile, with Zero Wing's lack of resources and funding, the best solution to improve Zero Wing's situation was to secure the Misty Canyon. There were more than 10 NPC cities worth of players trying to enter the Boundary River. Meanwhile, these players could only get to the Boundary River through the Misty Canyon. Adding on the fact that there were no NPC settlements located in or near the Misty Canyon, it went without saying that various powers would fight to establish guild towns in the Misty Canyon in the future. Now that SHI plus Feng had a town rune crystal, he naturally had to secure the best location in the Misty Canyon as soon as possible. Once he did that, not only could he increase the leveling efficiency of Zero Wing's members, but the guild would also have its funding problem resolved. Once players reached level 110, there would be many experts flooding into the Misty Canyon. At that time, there'd be no need to worry about no players coming to rest in Zero Wing's town. It had also become much easier for Zero Wing to recruit expert players. After all, who could resist the opportunity to get a huge lead ahead of others in the miniature ancient world? Whatever, it's your choice. But don't blame me if you die. Hidden Soul stopped trying to dissuade SHI plus Feng after hearing his answer. Although she didn't know what SHI plus Feng was trying to do here, she had no reason to give up on an opportunity to earn 500,000 GCPs just by completing a simple task. Immediately, Hidden Soul jumped off the Thunder Wolf's back and activated instantaneous movement, Vonnies. HI plussing into mist and disappearing from SHI plus Feng's perception in the blink of an eye. Seeing this, SHI plus Feng had to admit that Hidden Soul was indeed a monster. After SHI plus Feng waited for nearly 2 hours, he received a message from Hidden Soul that contained a detailed roadmap leading to the Misty Canyon's inner region. Hidden Soul had also marked the layout of monsters along the route and made notes of their rank, level, and perception range. Her infiltration skills are truly amazing. It's no wonder she managed to kill all those outerworld God-ranked experts and fight Demon's Gate's Death Wind to a standstill, SHI plus Feng thought as he looked at Hidden Soul's roadmap in admiration. It should be known that the Death Wind was one of Demon's Gate's 9 great experts, and he claimed that he had a divine eye. In terms of strength, Death Wind was capable of going against an entire subworld's experts all by himself. No matter how weak a subworld was, it would have at least several dozen Tier 6 God-ranked experts. In other words, Death Wind was capable of going up against several dozen Tier 6 experts simultaneously. Yet, Hidden Soul managed to fight Death Wind to a standstill in the past. This showed just how much talent and skill she possessed. Although the Hidden Soul in this life had only managed to reach Tier 5, she definitely wasn't as simple as she seemed. Meanwhile, after SHI plus Feng researched the roadmap, he recalled the Thunder Wolf and started following the map on foot. An hour later. We can't go any further from here. The area ahead of us is infested with level 120 Grand Lords and level 120 Mythic bosses, Hidden Soul said as she pointed at the area that linked the Misty Canyon and the Boundary River. I have already explored the surrounding area for locations without monsters and vast terrain as you requested. 2 places match your requirements. Take a look at them yourselves. After saying so, Hidden Soul marked 2 locations on SHI plus Feng's map of the Misty Canyon. Of the 2 locations she found, one was located by a creek near the Misty Canyon's core region, and the ambient mana here was incredibly dense. The other location was at the top of a cliff in the Misty Canyon's inner region, which overlooked a significant portion of the Misty Canyon. Although it had less dense mana, the location was easily defensible. Meanwhile, after looking at these two locations, SHI plus Feng hesitated only for a moment before he had Hidden Soul lead him to the creek. Mana was the basis of everything in God's domain. Denser mana meant quicker improvements. A mana-rich area would be especially useful when nurturing newcomers in the guild. After circling past a bunch of level 118 demonic beasts, SHI plus Feng and Hidden Soul arrived before a forest surrounded by a creek. "That's the place," Hidden Soul said as she pointed at the lush forest ahead. "That's it for our agreement. If you don't need me for anything else, I will be taking my leave now." "Aren't you curious why I came here?" SHI plus Feng asked, smiling as he looked at Hidden Soul. "I might have been curious before, but is there even a need to wonder after seeing all of the actions you have taken here?" In a nonchalant tone, Hidden Soul said, "You are neither here to grind nor search for treasures. You even asked me to find a safe and spacious area. Other than building a town, I can't think of anything else you would be doing here." Hidden Soul wasn't particularly surprised to learn that SHI plus Feng was trying to establish a town here. After all, SHI plus Feng was an Outer World God ranked expert. He must possess means beyond the imagination of ordinary powers, so it wouldn't be strange if he could come up with a guild town SP shortly after the miniature ancient world opened. However, in response to Hidden Soul's words, SHI plus Feng shook his head and smiled, saying, "You're only half correct." Chapter 95, Abyssal Star Ancient City. Chapter 95, Abyssal Star Ancient City. TL Notes. Town Rune Crystal - Settlement Rune Crystal. Half. Hidden Soul was a little surprised. "I indeed plan to set up a settlement here, but other than a settlement, I also plan on HI plusing an outer mercenary organization for Zero Wing," SHI plus Feng said. "Meanwhile, I plan on putting you in charge of this mercenary organization." There were all sorts of player forces in God's domain. Other than the mainstream forces like guilds, adventurer teams, trading firms, and sin organizations, there were also other forces such as mercenary organizations. In the case of mercenary organizations, they catered to independent experts that disliked being bound by restrictions, offering them tasks in exchange for credits or resources in God's domain. Meanwhile, there were many uses for a guild to establish a mercenary organization. Among them, the biggest use was to recruit a large number of independent experts for the guild's use. Currently, although Zero Wing already possessed a good foundation, it was still too weak compared to the various long-standing powers in God's domain. It simply lacked the strength to protect its interests in God's domain. The best example would be the ancient demon court. Had it not been for SHI plus Feng's strength acting as a deterrence and the ancient demon court's unique characteristics, Zero Wing couldn't have retained owners HI plus P over it at all. Meanwhile, with Zero Wing's current members, there was no way it would have enough strength to defend a guild city. It was especially true if the various superpowers set their sights on it. SHI plus Feng still didn't possess the strength to go up against multiple superpowers simultaneously. Hence, the best solution was for Zero Wing to establish a mercenary organization based in Zero Wing's settlement and quickly recruit the help of a large number of independent experts to assist the guild. By doing so, Zero Wing could ensure its settlement's security while acquiring a large amount of coins and resources. Meanwhile, who better to lead such an organization than Hidden Soul? As a former commander in the Flower of Seven Sins, she was undoubtedly acquainted with many peak and apex independent experts. She would have no trouble attracting these independent experts to work for Zero Wing. "I refuse." Hidden Soul shook her head, flatly refusing SHI plus Feng's offer. "My goal is only that holy annihilation mana technique. I am not interested in anything else." Hidden Soul naturally understood SHI plus Feng's intentions. He was most likely trying to use her as a cover against the various superpowers while he manipulated the situation in the dark. She'd be a fool if she agreed to his request. "Don't be so quick to refuse," SHI plus Feng said, smiling. "I know this job comes with a lot of risks, but with high risks comes high rewards." If you can take on this job and safeguard Zero Wing's settlement, I can give you a copy of the mana technique for free. Moreover, don't you want to see what kind of settlement I'll be establishing? Hi+ing? Hidden Soul was a little tempted when she heard Hi+Feng's offer. However, she quickly shook her head after thinking it over. She'd be insane to go against the various superpowers for nothing more than a settlement. However, before Hidden Soul could open her mouth to voice her refusal, Hi+Feng took out the settlement rune crystal from his bag and recited the incantation engraved on it. Meanwhile, as soon as Hi+Feng started reciting the incantation, an intense pillar of light suddenly emerged from the ground around Hi+Feng and shot straight up into the sky. This mana. How is this possible? Hidden Soul was dumbfounded when she saw the light pillar that enveloped Hi+Feng. This was because she could sense that the thing before her wasn't a light pillar at all. Instead, it was a pillar of mana so pure and intense that it was already comparable to the mana of Tier 6 gods. Meanwhile, after this pillar of mana extended 1,000 meters into the air, it began spreading apart to form a magic array that covered nearly half of the entire Misty Canyon. Then, once this gigantic magic array had finished forming, an ancient and majestic settlement gradually emerged from it and descended on the forest Hi+Feng designated. When the settlement had flattened the forest and settled on the ground, Hi+Feng promptly received a series of system notifications. System. Congratulations. You have successfully summoned the Abyssal Star Ancient City, one of the 9 ancient legacy cities of the second sequence, and became the ancient city's governor. System. The Abyssal Star Ancient City will receive full protection for 10 natural days. Please construct the city's defenses during the protection period. System. The Abyssal Star Ancient City will be fully opened after 10 natural days. All cities in the surrounding region will be notified at that time. Is this the true foundation of an ancient demon court found in the miniature ancient world? Hi+Feng couldn't help but feel complicated when he read the system notifications. He didn't know whether he should laugh or cry about this situation. One of the 9 ancient legacy cities of the second sequence. I won't be able to maintain a low profile even if I want to now. The ancient demon courts were the civilization legacies left behind by the ancient demon gods. Among the legacies found in ancient demon courts, the best legacies would undoubtedly be the settlements the ancient demon gods constructed. Meanwhile, these ancient settlements could be categorized into 3 groups: the 3 holy cities of the first sequence, the 9 ancient legacy cities of the second sequence, and the 100 towns of the third sequence. Although there was a significant disparity between the 3 groups, even the towns in the third sequence were incredibly powerful. Given enough time, a small guild could easily grow into a superpower with the help of a third sequence town. This was also why Hi+Feng was confident he could persuade Hidden Soul to help him. These legacy settlements functioned specifically to nurture players. Meanwhile, even Tier 6 god ranked experts could receive some harvest from a third sequence town, let alone players who hadn't reached Tier 6. However, Hi+Feng never imagined that the settlement rune crystal he acquired would yield such an amazing result. He couldn't believe he had summoned the Abyssal Star Ancient City, one of the 9 ancient legacy cities, just by spending 200,000 magic crystals. It should be known that during his previous life, even with the almighty Zero Wing supporting him, he had relied heavily on luck to summon an ancient city. Meanwhile, thanks to this ancient city, Zero Wing was able to solidify its foundation and establish a foothold in the greater gods domain. In contrast, the current Zero Wing had already gained an ancient city despite being a newly established guild. If the greater gods domain's various powers were to learn of this, they would probably mobilize the entirety of their respective world's power to steal this city. Compared to Hi+Feng, Hidden Soul had a much greater reaction when she saw the majestic city that had replaced the forest before her. With her eyes filled with shock and confusion, she yelled, "An ancient city?" Originally, she thought that Hi+Feng was merely building a new town. She never expected Hi+Feng to summon a city, much less an ancient city. As a former commander of the Flower of Seven Sins, Hidden Soul was no stranger to ancient cities. This was because the Flower of Seven Sins also owned several ancient cities. Meanwhile, every ancient city was a treasure trove left behind by an ancient civilization, and it could provide immense help to both individuals and organizations. It'd be more appropriate to call this a primordial city than an ancient city, Shi+Feng said as he looked at Hidden Soul's dazed expression. Then, he smiled and said, "Let's go in and take a look." After saying so, Shi+Feng began walking toward the Abyssal Star ancient city. Meanwhile, Hidden Soul didn't hesitate for long before she followed after him. TL notes, I mentioned it in a previous chapter, but I will be using settlement as a general term for towns and cities. When I use settlement, I could be referring to towns, cities, or both. Unlike when I was translating the main story for RSSG, I don't have many future chapters to use as reference for the side story, so forgive me if I keep making changes to certain terms. I also plan to modify certain terms and capitalization to streamline things. To name a few examples: 1. NPC Town City-NPC Town City, capitalization changed to match the capitalization of Guild Town City. 2. Set Equipment-Equipment Set, to make it easier to describe set equipment in plural. Equipment is a noun without a plural form, so I'd have to use a lengthy approach when talking about multiple sets. E.g. 5 sets of set equipment. With equipment set, I can just go 4-5 equipment sets instead. Chapter 96, Holy Land. Chapter 96, Holy Land. The Abyssal Star ancient city wasn't very large, its size was only that of an advanced town. Unlike an advanced town, though, the ancient city was surrounded by a circle of tall walls. The moment Shi+Feng and Hidden Soul stepped into the city, they could instantly feel the mysterious energy in their bodies disappearing rapidly. The speed at which the mysterious energy dissipated here was more than double what they experienced when resting in the hotels of NPC cities. How amazing! The core magic array still isn't in operation, yet not only does it have mana concentration rivaling NPC cities, but it also has such a powerful cleansing effect. Is this the power of a primordial city? Hidden Soul exclaimed when she noticed the changes to her body after entering a city. There was a huge difference between a city with its core magic array activated and a city with its core magic array deactivated. Meanwhile, this was the first time she had seen a city with such powerful effects even with its core magic array deactivated. Unlike Hidden Soul, Shi+Feng took this situation calmly. As one of the 9 ancient cities built by the ancient demon Gods, the functions Hidden Soul had stated were nothing but the tip of the iceberg. This was because every ancient legacy city of the second sequence would already possess environments rivaling the Holy Lands in Gods domain in its initial stage. Sometime later, Shi+Feng arrived at the heart of Abyssal Star City with Hidden Soul. Situated at the city's heart was an ancient tower that extended up to 500 meters into the air. Meanwhile, situated at the top of the tower was a dazzling rune, the rune acting like a lamp that illuminated the entire city. However, this ancient tower wasn't just a simple lighthouse. Instead, the stronghold held the Abyssal Star ancient city's secrets. Of the 9 ancient legacy cities the ancient demon Gods left behind, every one of them possessed a different ability. As an example, the legacy stored within the ancient city Zero Wing obtained during Shi+Feng's previous life was related to concentration, and it could help players improve their concentration rapidly. Thanks to this legacy, the number of Tier 5 and Tier 6 experts Zero Wing possessed far surpassed that of other guilds. Meanwhile, shortly after Shi+Feng and Hidden Soul walked into the ancient tower, they were quickly dumbfounded by what they found. When they entered the tower's first floor, the first thing that greeted them was a row of tightly shut stone doors, and every one of these doors had strange symbols engraved on them. Then, after opening a few of these doors, they found that beyond each of these stone doors was a miniature world. Indeed, a miniature world. Every one of these miniature worlds had a unique environment. Or, more specifically, players could freely set the environment they desired in these rooms. They could set the room to become a world filled with only a specific type of mana. They could also set it so that the mana was excited or calm. One could say that these rooms were the ideal training ground for players to improve their control over mana. Incredible. The legacy in this city is truly terrifying. Shi+Feng was shocked beyond words as he looked at the many stone doors on the tower's first floor. The mana in God's domain was a composite of various types of mana. It didn't consist of just one specific type of mana. However, when players used skills and spells, they would often use only one specific type of mana. Meanwhile, depending on how much mana of that specific type they managed to accumulate, the speed of their spellcasting and the power of their spells would be completely different. If players stood in an environment that possessed only one type of mana, the ambient mana would greatly help them if they were to use skills or spells of the same type. It was especially true when it came to mastering the operating principles of that specific mana type. It should be known that after reaching Tier 5, players would need to understand the operating principles of the various types of mana in order to construct their divine body and reach Tier 6. However, the process of learning these operating principles was incredibly challenging since players couldn't typically see or touch mana. They could only rely on their other senses to perceive it. The fact that ambient mana was a composite of various mana types made things even more challenging. However, the miniature worlds here provided the solution to this problem. By allowing players to filter the ambient mana around them to just one specific type, these miniature worlds could reduce the difficulty players faced in understanding mana by more than tenfold. After calming his excited heart, Shi+Feng couldn't help but turn toward Hidden Soul, who was still in a daze. Then, he smiled and asked, "Now that you've seen this city's abilities, what do you think of my proposal? Are you sure you want to put me in charge of this city?" Hidden Soul asked after snapping out of her daze. She'd be lying if she said she wasn't interested in the Abyssal Star Ancient City. To be precise, no player wouldn't be interested in this city. What was her goal in obtaining the Holy Annihilation mana technique? Wasn't it so that she could better understand and control mana? Meanwhile, the Abyssal Star Ancient City provided an unbelievable training environment to improve her learning efficiency by more than tenfold. How could she possibly refuse the chance to make use of this training environment? Since I am having you establish a mercenary organization with this city as its base, I will naturally leave this city's responsibility with you, Shi+Feng said, nodding without hesitation. Had he summoned only a third sequence town, he might have had a way of letting Zero Wing defend it. However, a second sequence city was no longer something the current Zero Wing could defend. After all, the existence of this city would be revealed to the entire miniature ancient world in 10 days. The only solution Shi+Feng could think of to retain owners Hi+P over the city was having Hidden Soul step forward as its governor. After all, the Flower of Seven Sins was an existence no weaker than the 5 great super guilds. Of course, Shi+Feng also had other solutions to defend the Abyssal Star Ancient City if need be. However, not only would there be no benefits for him in doing so, but revealing these methods would also attract a bunch of trouble to him. I'll say it up front. If all you want me to do is form a mercenary alliance to guard the Abyssal Star Ancient City, it won't be difficult to do so. I can even contact a group of powerful experts to help us right now, Hidden Soul said after pondering for some time. But the real problem is those superpowers. If they learn of the benefits of this city, they might dispatch Tier 6 God ranked experts here. In my current state, there is nothing I can do against them. Previously, she had refused Shi+Feng's offer because she thought that Shi+Feng was merely establishing a guild town. If that were the case, the mercenary alliance she established wouldn't attract many independent experts to join. It was especially true for the independent experts she was acquainted with. Every one of them was incredibly prideful, and they showed no interest whatsoever even when the various super guilds offered them an advisory position in their respective guilds. There was no way they would help defend a measly guild town just for some meager leveling resources. However, it was a different story if the target of defense was the Abyssal Star Ancient City. With what the city had to offer, she was confident she could persuade her acquaintances to join her. She could even use this chance to reclaim her position in the Flower of Seven Sins. Unfortunately, with the standards of her and her acquaintances, There was nothing they could do if the various superpowers decided to dispatch Tier 6 God ranked experts. It was especially so when they might have to face more than one Tier 6 God ranked expert. Don't worry about that. I'll step forward if God ranked experts come, SHI plus Feng said, chuckling. Chapter 97, Arrival of New Era. Chapter 97, Arrival of New Era. If you can hold back those God ranked experts, there shouldn't be any problems on my side, Hidden Soul said, nodding. I won't even need 10 days to get the Mercenary Alliance up and running. Also, my suggestion is that we grade the Alliance's members based on contribution. For now, the ranks I have in mind are Bronze, Silver, and Gold, and we will use these ranks to determine how long each member can spend inside these miniature worlds. There were 100 stone doors on the ancient tower's first floor, which translated to 100 miniature worlds. That was by no means a large number. Moreover, although the ancient tower had 2 more floors, the second and third floors would only open when the city was promoted to a higher rank. Hence, there was no way to increase the number of miniature worlds inside the ancient tower within a short period. However, considering they would be using these miniature worlds to advertise Zero Wing's Mercenary Alliance, they needed to make it possible for as many people to experience the effects of these miniature worlds as possible. Otherwise, the number of players joining the Mercenary Alliance would decrease drastically. Meanwhile, the best way to do so was by limiting the amount of time each player could spend inside these miniature worlds. No problem, SHI plus Feng nodded in agreement. But in addition to making contributions, members must also pay a fee to use the miniature worlds. Bronze members will have to pay 200 magic crystals per hour, silver members will get a 10% discount, and gold members will get a 20% discount. The Abyssal Star Ancient City might be powerful, the miniature worlds cost a lot to operate. Each miniature world consumed 100 magic crystals per hour when in operation. If converted to coins, that would be nearly 50 gold coins per hour. If Zero Wing tried to subsidize this cost, the guild would go bankrupt in less than a day. My thoughts are similar. I'll get the city's management details sorted and send them to you afterward, Hidden Soul said, having no objections about SHI plus Feng's pricing. In her opinion, there wouldn't be a problem even if they charged 500 magic crystals per hour to use the miniature worlds, let alone 200 magic crystals. After all, it was incredibly challenging to grasp the operating principles of mana under normal circume stances. If her acquaintances were to find out that there was a way to reduce that difficulty by more than tenfold, they would probably beg her to let them stay in the miniature worlds for as long as possible. Afterward, SHI plus Feng Pares said a portion of the Abyssal Star Ancient City's authority to Hidden Soul and 100,000 magic crystals for backup. Then, after making sure that everything was okay, he chose to go offline to rest. As for the remaining matters relating to the city, he left all decision-making to Hidden Soul. It was without a doubt the best solution. After all, even he wasn't a match for Hidden Soul when it came to managing a mercenary organization. Then, once Hidden Soul had stabilized the Abyssal Star Ancient City's operations, all he needed to do was have Zero Wing secretly garrison the city. Jinhai City. When SHI plus Feng logged out of GODS domain, the morning sun was already SHI plus Ning into his bedroom on the second floor. Normally, even if he had spent the entire night awake in GODS domain, he should wake up in a refreshed state. Now, though looked incredibly exhausted as he climbed out of his virtual gaming cabin. Sure enough, the cabin's nutrient solution isn't enough to supplement the improvements I made this time. When SHI plus Feng saw that the gaming cabin's nutrient solution tank was already empty, he quickly retrieved a bottle of A-rank nutrient fluid from the fridge. Then, as soon as he drank it, he could feel his exhausted mind recovering significantly. Most people might be treating GODS domain as merely a virtual reality game, but SHI plus Feng was fully aware that GODS domain wasn't just a simple game. Instead, it was also a ladder of evolution. While playing GODS domain, players would receive gradual improvements to their brains. Then, their bodies would also start to improve to keep up with their brains' increased activity. However, these improvements came at the cost of a huge amount of energy. If players couldn't replenish the consumed energy in time, They might even end up burning their life energy. Of course, ordinary Tier 3 players would probably never face a situation where they would burn their life energy. This was because this was a situation that would only occur when the brain had managed to surpass the limits of its mental capacity. Meanwhile, after SHI plus Feng recovered from exhaustion, he clenched his fists and smiled. Although I exhausted myself by using light shadow many times, I made a lot of improvements as a result. My physical fitness is probably on par with top-tier athletes now. At this rate, I'll only need to train in the body strengthening technique for a few more days to reach the half-step master standard. Although the half-step master standard was nowhere near the master standard, so long as he had the physical fitness of a half-step master, he wouldn't have to worry about facing hidden threats. He could even join the GODS Domain Alliance and become an official member. The GODS Domain Alliance would, at most, provide basic support when it came to players who didn't qualify to become an official member. However, it was completely different once someone became an official member. So long as someone managed to become an official member of the GODS Domain Alliance, even the various corporations wouldn't dare to take any actions toward this person in the real world. Not on the surface, at least. Otherwise, it would be a direct provocation to the GODS Domain Alliance, which was something not even international corporations could afford to do. Because of this, powerful experts who had offended the various superpowers would never be afraid of suffering retaliation in the real world. They simply had to figure out how they could survive in GODS domain. Meanwhile, after SHI plus Feng executed 2 repet-I tie-ins of the body strengthening technique, he washed up and got ready to head to the GODS Domain Academy. However, just as he was about to leave his home, the doorbell suddenly rang. Upon checking the front door security camera through his watch, SHI plus Feng saw a middle-aged man and a young woman standing outside his house. To his surprise, his visitors were Qi Lianshan and Chen Zio. "Instructor Qi? Aren't we about to head to the secret pavilion's branch headquarters? Why did you suddenly come to my place?" SHI plus Feng asked, feeling a little surprised and confused as he looked at Qi Lianshan and Chen Zio. Today was a big day for Jinhai University's GODS Domain Academy. After all, the visit to the secret pavilion's branch headquarters was essentially a free training session for the academy's students and instructors. Meanwhile, the opportunity to train at a transcendental power didn't come by easily. "It is because of this that I hurried here to find you, Instructor SHI plus," Qi Lianshan said with a bitter smile. "Did something happen?" SHI plus Feng asked curiously. "The problem lies with me." After taking a look at Chen Zio, Qi Lianshan gritted his teeth and continued, "I hope that you can become Zio's instructor, Instructor SHI plus." "Me? Become her instructor?" SHI plus Feng couldn't help but look at Chen Zio, who currently had her head lowered in silence. Chen Zio was Instructor Qi's prized pupil. SHI plus Feng found it hard to imagine that Qi Lianshan would take the initiative to give Chen Zio to him. After all, it should be known that apprentice-teacher relations HI plus PS were given great importance in the current GODS domain. Otherwise, there wouldn't have been so many students trying to fight for Wu Lingling. "That's right." Qi Lianshan nodded. "Then," he said, "I wouldn't have wanted to do this, either, if I wasn't left with no better choice. However, Zio can successfully get into GODS Domain's talent camp. This will all be worth it." GODS Domain's talent camp, SHI plus Feng couldn't help but be confused. He had no idea what Qi Lianshan was talking about at all. "This is a secret I found out only recently." Withholding no information, Qi Lianshan explained, "The visit to the secret pavilion's branch headquarters today isn't just a simple tour or training camp. In reality, it is a selection meeting for all GODS domain academies in the world. It isn't just the secret pavilion that is involved. Many super guilds are also holding tours today as a front for this selection meeting. Meanwhile, the organizer for this meeting is the GODS Domain Alliance. It seems that the GODS Domain Alliance is planning to go all out and nurture a group of geniuses to combat the World Pass Sage opening. However, as most fourth-year students have already signed contracts with the various powers, the selection meeting this time is mainly targeted toward third-year students. Chapter 98, True Transcendental Power. Chapter 98, True Transcendental Power. The GODS Domain Alliance is going all out to nurture geniuses. SHI Plus Feng was very surprised to hear this news. The War of Worlds was no secret to him. Although there also existed an organization similar to the GODS Domain Alliance during his previous life, this organization had only started nurturing talents of the new generation after the World Gate had fully opened. Meanwhile, once the World Gate was fully opened, there wouldn't be just one World Par Sage connecting the two GODS domains. Instead, countless Par Sages would randomly form, allowing the two GODS domains to compete and devour each other. However, as Tier 6 GOD-ranked experts were needed to safeguard key locations, the main fighting force of the two GODS domains in the War of Worlds would consist of Tier 4 and Tier 5 experts. Originally, SHI Plus Feng thought it would be much later before the GODS Domain Alliance realized the need to nurture the new generation's talents. He didn't think the organization would notice it already. This is indeed outside of everyone's expectations, Qi Lianshan said, expressing his understanding when he saw the look of surprise on SHI Plus Feng's face. But I can confidently tell you that this information is true. Originally, the GODS Domain Alliance was merely a loose organization focused on hosting events in the real world. While it might be considered the biggest force in GODS domain, it had hardly any territory in the game. So, nobody could have expected that the GODS Domain Alliance would suddenly decide to nurture geniuses unaffiliated to it and spare no cost while doing so. But what does this have to do with Zio becoming my apprentice? SHI Plus Feng asked as he looked at Qi Lianshan in confusion. According to my sources, the selection this time requires students to be at the half-step refinement realm standard at the very least. In addition, their instructors must be at the flowing water realm or above. If a student can't meet these two conditions, they won't even qualify to partic. IP8 in the selection, Qi Lianshan said, sighing. We wouldn't have had to take such measures if I were still in my prime, but I'm afraid you are the only person who is in such a realm in our academy right now, Instructor SHI Plus. It seems the GODS Domain Alliance has put a lot of considerations into this, SHI Plus Feng said, realization dawning upon him. The GODS Domain Alliance indeed had access to an unimaginable amount of resources. However, players couldn't become powerful experts simply by having a lot of resources. They also needed capable teachers to offer them pointers. If a player had a flowing water realm expert by their side constantly offering them guidance, they could improve their combat standards much more quickly. Moreover, flowing water realm experts were Tier 4 players on average, with some even being Tier 5 players. So, they could help their students level up very quickly as well. In other words, while the GODS Domain Alliance might be willing to offer students with resources, students would need to have their instructors resolve the problem of leveling up and improving their combat standards. I know you are very busy teaching Wu Lingling and the others, and you probably don't have a lot of free time to partic. IP8 in the selection, Instructor SHI Plus. Gritting his teeth, Qi Lianshan said, but so long as you agree to partic. IP8 in the selection this time, I will give you a bottle of S-rank nutrient fluid afterward. S-rank nutrient fluids were incredibly precious to expert players. Even though Qi Lianshan was a senior instructor at Jinhai University's GODS Domain Academy, it had taken him great pains to exchange even one bottle. Originally, he had planned to use this bottle to recover his mental state. However, compared to Chen Zio's future, the recovery of his mental state could wait. A bottle of S-rank nutrient fluid? After pondering for some time, SHI Plus Feng said, okay, I can agree to your offer, but I'm not taking responsibility for Zio's subsequent leveling up. SHI Plus Feng was currently an intermediate instructor already. Although he had the qualifications to exchange for S-rank nutrient fluids, it would take him a long time to accumulate 1 million academy points. Most importantly, there was an exchange limit put on S-rank nutrient fluids. If he recalled correctly, intermediate instructors were only allowed to exchange one bottle a year. However, one bottle was nowhere near enough for him. After all, he was no longer young. He would need a lot of energy to recover his life force, repair his body's damaged cells, and improve his physical fitness. You don't have to worry about this point, Instructor SHI+. All you need to do is par-SS the selections test, Qi Lianshan said, feeling a little excited when he heard SHI+ Feng's answer. Then, he quickly tapped on his quantum watch and transferred Chen Zio's instructor position to SHI+ Feng. Meanwhile, SHI+ Feng promptly clicked agree when he received the transfer prompt on his watch. With this, he became Chen Zio's instructor on paper. After settling this matter, Qi Lianshan quickly led SHI+ Feng to his luxury sedan and drove him and Chen Zio to Jinhai University to meet up with the other students and instructors. Liufeng City, Secret Pavilion's branch headquarters. As a first-tier city, Liufeng City's population exceeded 10 million. Meanwhile, the Secret Pavilion's branch headquarters sat in the heart of the city, the headquarters' 2 towers having over 200 floors and occupying an area of 2 sports stadiums. The twin towers were more than capable of accommodating tens of thousands of people to work and train inside. How spectacular! So, this is one of the Secret Pavilion's branch headquarters? As expected of a transcendental power in God's domain. Just one of its branch headquarters already looks so amazing. It would be great if I could become an internal member of the Secret Pavilion. Quick, look. The Secret Pavilion's recruits are training over there. It's true. The instructor teaching them seems to be Rainbow Chaser, one of the Secret Pavilion's newly promoted Tier 5 expert. When Jinhai University's students looked out the windows of their bus and saw the Secret Pavilion's branch headquarters, they couldn't help but marvel at the sight before them. The state of the Secret Pavilion's branch headquarters was on an entirely different level even when compared to the main headquarters of first-rate guilds. Just the instructor responsible for guiding the recruits at the branch headquarters was already a Tier 5 expert. This was a luxury no first-rate guild could afford for a branch headquarters. Moreover, the 1,000 recruits training on the field between the 2 towers were incredibly talented. Even though these recruits looked like they were only 14 or 15 years old, even the weakest among them was already at the Trial Tower's 5th floor middle stage standard. If put in Jinhai University, they'd be regarded as geniuses among geniuses. Yet, in the Secret Pavilion, these geniuses were nothing more than ordinary recruits, a fact proven by the emblems they wore on their SHI+ RTS. Before becoming official internal members, the Secret Pavilion's recruits would only receive a 1-star light blue emblem. Only after becoming an official internal member would they receive a 2-star dark blue emblem. While Jinhai University students were in shock over the sight they just saw, a long line of buses started arriving at the Secret Pavilion's branch headquarters one after another, their numbers exceeding 80. This meant that at least 80 God's domain academies had come to partake. IP8 in the Secret Pavilion's tour this time. This number far exceeded their initial expectations. Moreover, out of these buses, there were even some that transported students from advanced God's domain academies. What's going on? Why are students from advanced academies here as well? Ji Yutong couldn't help but be shocked when he looked at the students alighting from the various advanced God's domain academies buses. Advanced God's domain academies. To most students seeking to make a living from God's domain, advanced God's domain academies were schools they dreamed of entering. Unlike the average God's domain academy, advanced God's domain academies were true high-level education centers with several major corporations backing them. Some even had the support of international organizations. Meanwhile, with such ample funding, the instructors these advanced academies could recruit were also much superior in quality, with even the weakest instructor in these academies being a refinement realm expert. Partic. IP ants of God's Domain's A-League would also hold lectures in these academies from time to time. However, as with the quality of their instructors, these advanced academies also had a high entry requirement. If students wished to even partic IP8 in the enrollment test of these advanced academies, they'd need to be at the 5th floor middle stage standard, which was the official standard of ordinary experts, at the very least. What is the Secret Pavilion even thinking? I can't believe they invited a bunch of NO bodies to the tour. That's right. The Secret Pavilion even wants us to spar with them. How are we supposed to improve by sparring with these country B Yum Pekins? I think we might even regress if we fought them. When a group of freshmen alighted from an advanced academy's bus and saw the freshmen of the other academies around them, a look of disdain appeared on their faces. Meanwhile, the students from the other academies naturally grew angry when they heard the words of this group of students. However, none of them dared to say anything since the other party consisted of experts at the trial tower's 5th floor late stage or above. These students were not people they could compete against. Most importantly, the instructors following these students were not existences they could afford to offend, since every one of them was a flowing water realm expert. These experts were either elders of first-rate guilds or vice-commanders of adventurer teams. Meanwhile, after Jinhai University's bus found a parking spot, Lin Yaoyu, the leader of the group, said, "Let's get off the bus as well." You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.